For video 2 we're going towards Zero Punctuation style, and whilst there's no way in hell that I can make something as awesome as Yahtzee himself, I'll do my best to be as relatively average as humanly possible. Actually, you know what? Bugger it, I'll do a mediocre job and I'll do it proudly. This might not be a review show, but I'll be damned if I can't throw my shit at the wall and call it art. 2D puzzle platformers were long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, an incredibly popular subgenre in the slowly expanding monopoly that was the video game industry. They found an interesting balance between jumping around like your arse is full of threadworms and actually having to stop and think, wait a moment, I need to figure something out. I'll have to use that mushy pink thing crammed into my skull. For some reason, and don't ask me why because finding that out wasn't part of the distinction criteria, the puzzle part of the 2D puzzle platformer faded into obscurity. I can only imagine this had something to do with these piles of uninspired garbage that dominated the mainstream throughout the late 90s and early 2000s. However, in 2007, Valve released Portal, a puzzle platform game considered by the majority as the perfect game. Hold on, a video game that required you to think that everybody loved? Well, paint me green and call me Shrek's c***. This is quite the surprise. So, why was Portal so good? Well, the general consensus was that it had an incredibly well-polished set of game mechanics, was short enough not to outstay its welcome whilst remaining interesting, and was filled with some of the best black comedy lines that have ever been in a game. Now at this point you might be thinking, so when the hell is he going to start talking about his game? To which I shall swiftly reply, right now, since I'm done with my very necessary preamble, thank you very much. Bolts and Gears, the game about a horde of robots rustier than Bruce Forsyth, began with a brainstorm filled with really terrible game ideas. To list the absolute worst, The Awesome Adventures of Captain Action and the Technomancers. A Wii-based 2D side-scroller, Captain Awesome and his trusty companions, the Technomancers, are enjoying everyday life when the evil maid Wacky Wendy attacks. The captain and co must chase after her and foil her plan to take over Epicville. I'm not sure what form of classy recreational drug I was consuming when this idea was being fired through my synapses, but at least I came to my senses and slapped that particular piece of jank down before it could be unleashed upon the world. Honestly, it wasn't difficult to pick Bolts and Gears because it was the only game idea that I had that wasn't either A, a blatant rip-off of another game, or B, shit. There's a gap in the market for a 2D puzzle platformer, and I genuinely think that if this game was done correctly and filled with as much sappiness as a rom-com starring Chris O'Dowd, it could actually succeed in an industry that seems completely incapable of learning from its mistakes. Yes, I'm looking at you, EA. Anyway, after creating some mood boards and gathering a bunch of advice from other people and then promptly ignoring that advice, I picked Bolts and Gears. The other contenders were Gravinome, a game about a gnome that navigates around mini garden planets by manipulating gravitational pull like a tiny sociopathic omnipotent arsehole, and Nick of Time. Yes, it's a time travel game about a guy called Nick. I clearly have issues. So let's talk about the game itself. Bolts and Gears is of course a 2D puzzle platformer, hence why I spent ages rambling about the genre. Similar games in the market are Super Mario Bros., Rayman and Sonic the Hedgehog. Specifically though, the 2D puzzle platformer has, as I mentioned earlier, faded into obscurity. There was a game called Lemmings which was being developed back when my parents were still struggling to cope with the daunting and harrowing prospect of adult life, i.e. the late 80s. The game is about a bunch of mentally challenged men who are so narrow-minded they dedicate their lives to one basic menial task and can do all else. The various classes of lemmings had to be used by the player to solve obstacles. For example, a minor lemming was the only one that could chip its way through a giant boulder. However, the graphics and gameplay style of Lemmings never took off because they never developed the idea as computers got better. It just sat there in the back like a bruised banana, getting overlooked in the favour of all the more pure bananas looking for a career in modelling. This metaphor is getting away from me now, so let's move on. I wanted to take the concept of Lemmings in its most basic form and redefine the whole idea from the ground up. Portal has led to a sharp rise in consumer interest in puzzle games, so I decided that now was the best time to try and fill the gap in the market. I'm going to try and sum up the game now because I seem to keep circling the issue and never delving into it. Bolts and Gears is a PC and mobile game about using various types of robots to solve puzzles in a ruined industrial facility. The main aim of the game is to use the least amount of robots to solve a puzzle and therefore get the highest score. The robots are quite moronic however, so if a ledge comes near they'll simply walk off it like they've got absolutely nothing to live for. You use the 6 different classes of robots to get through the obstacles. The climber is able to climb up and down ladders, the blocker stops at a ledge to stop the other robots jumping off, etc, etc. As you complete levels, the factory begins coming online, and between levels, cinematics and hidden areas, they reveal a backstory showing what happened to the factory to get it into this state. I was actually somewhat inspired by Portal's ability to market itself to such an enormous range of people. Anyone could pick the damn thing up and play it to their heart's content, and it was something that I really wanted to do for Bolts and Gears as well. The design style was key, and I think a simplistic vector style can appeal to both young and older audiences. Young because it's very cartoon-like, and older because it's nostalgic. The game I used as inspiration for my artwork style was Speedrunners, though my final posters look a lot different. Let's just call it artistic development and move on. Modern audiences require more than just a pretty backdrop though, the snobby bastards. They need story, emotional investment and ease of access. Now, sorry to burst the immersive bubble that the brief is supposed to give, but I never actually created the game, so I can't say much about the ease of access, but I can say that my concept was certainly reel people in. Everyone loves a good enigma, and the mystery of the rusty, run-down industrial building is sure to bring in everyone from Sherlock Holmes himself to the health inspector. Once I've made all the assets for my poster and pitch, I pitched the game to a bunch of people at different age ranges. The kids loved it, the adults liked it, and the teenagers adored it, so my aim to create something that reached out to everyone was clearly goddamn successful. Hell yeah, right, let's go over everything again. So to recap, I brainstormed for some game ideas. Most of them were terrible. I picked Bolts and Gears, a game inspired by a puzzle platformer called Lemmings. 2D puzzle platforms aren't particularly popular, but Portal helped change that. My game is about using various classes of robots to solve puzzles. In its artwork style, gameplay design and story, it's aimed at a wide audience, though teenagers seem to respond to it best. And lastly, I had to pitch my game to the class for some crazy idiotic reason, though I decided to wait until the last minute, and then went absolutely overboard. I designed a box cover and created physical copies, I drew out skylines, made intro sequences for my videos, and I found a voice actor on Reddit and created full-on animated sequences. In the end though, I found myself pulling an all-nighter surrounded by half-drunk bottles of Lucas-aiding gummy bears as I slaved away getting the thing done right before I had to pitch. Honestly, I should have just jammed forks into my eyes and been done with it.